And this whole thing now can be moved around because this is in a container, of course. It's in a geometry container. So if I move the whole thing, the stuff inside will be transformed by this. To make it even a little bit more robust, I like to make a separate, instead of doing it on the heli here, I like to just do this. This way I could store an animation in this null. And what I did here was I established a parenting relationship. So now when I move the null instead, this does not have a transformation, but it's moving because the parent is moving. So if I did something like that, if I break this parenting relationship, it just goes back. So now I could have two different ones of these. I could have two different animations. So let's say it's a whole different thing. So now if I parent to this one, it's got that, it's got this, it's got that. So I can essentially store different animations in nodes like that. And that's just something that I like to do. So at this point, what we can do is let's think, what do we want to do? How about we make a grid for the ground, and let's set up like a camera and everything, just so we can see essentially what we want to do. And of course, you can do whatever you want. I'm gonna say, for me, I'm gonna say let's have a helicopter that's, maybe we'll only do this over 120 frames. I'm gonna make this 120 also. So we got that, and I'm gonna say, how about we start somewhere up here, come in down here, and the simulation I'll animate it from here to here maybe. So I'll have it come, whoops, turn this off. That's the grid thing. When this is off, you'll move things relative to the camera space. When this is on, it's gonna move things along the ground, which is why it's getting out so far like that. So I'm gonna turn that off. Anyway, so for the first few frames, I'll wanna have it come in, and then the simulation will take over. But by then, it will already have the velocity from it being animated. It's like a toy I'm playing with. Whee. So I'm gonna say, by frame 7, let's say, by frame 7 is when I want it to be hitting the ground in some way. So I'm gonna say it hits the ground like this. Pretty intense like that. So kind of rolling to the side maybe for effect. And maybe because I know it's gonna roll to the side, maybe I'll start it a little closer over here to give it room to break that way. I mean, obviously this would be more dictated by your actual shot or movie or program that you're doing. In our case, I'm just trying to think of something cool. So something like that. So I'm going to alt-click this, which will keyframe it on frame 7. And you can see if I right-click, it's shift left mouse button, or rather alt left mouse button to set the keyframes, like I just said. And then frame 0, let's back it out to maybe it's not quite as askew yet. Maybe it's something like that. Something like that. Alt-click. So now you can see it comes in like that. Very good. We'll want to make sure, by default, Houdini is nice and gives you these like ramp in, ramp out things. In this case, we definitely don't want that. We don't want it to slow down before it hits the ground. I don't even really want it to speed up as it's going along. I figure it's already been shot or something. Let's just make them linear. Everything's linear, so it's just going. It's going the same speed the whole time. And then at some frame, I will make it become active. I might even say that frame 7, just for planning purposes, let's have it actually hitting the ground so we can kind of predict where it would be by frame 7. But we'll actually have the simulation start earlier. We'll probably have it start like here or something like that, at 5. Boom, boom. And we'll just see how that goes. So much of the simulation's look is going to depend on how close we are to, or rather how fast it's going. So even me just arbitrarily choosing these positions is going to have a profound effect on what my sim looks like, which might, your sim will look different than mine because you probably didn't put exactly what I put here. I'm going to get a little bit closer to it too, just so we can really see stuff happen. Something like that. So it's just coming on screen, boom. Great. Save. All right, so speaking of coming in close like this, was control click on camera so that we actually have a camera from our perspective. So it kind of starts off frame, comes in like that, and then it will continue to do its craziness. And the final thing I want to do, and this is something that I like to do, is when we start our simulation, because this is the first frame up here, all the pieces, and in particular, all of the constraints are going to start there. And it's going to consider that to be their kind of initial state. And it's a little weird to work with stuff starting in the world space. Like if later on, really what I'm getting at is later on, I'm going to want this shaft here to be like a propeller spinning, attached to here and spinning. If it was just resting on the ground, I would know immediately this axis is, y is 1 and x is 0 and z is 0. It's just straight up and down. When it's here, it's kind of like, I don't really know what that axis is. So what I like to do, just because I'm a human with limitations, I like the very first frame actually to be at the origin. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to move all these guys up one frame, and I'll move this up maybe a frame also. And then the first frame, I'll actually make it be 0. That way the simulation can initialize on this frame, and then I'll have it come up here. I'll have it be animated up to here, animated, 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 and then sim takes over. You'll see what I mean. But there you go. So that's us setting up our cool animation. Obviously, we won't render this frame. We don't need it, but it's there. It starts off camera anyway. Great. Moving on.